Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile video, and in this one, we're going to talk about the high-budget Poison Animate weapon, which is a personal favorite of mine, and I brought this build up to some absolutely hilarious levels. Now, in the descriptions below, there is a link to the build guide, and in which we are focusing on the low-budget version of the build, and there is a medium and high-budget version as well, and then there is this version, which I wanted to show you guys in today's video. I want to talk about a little bit about the pros and cons of the build and take it from there, and just talk about the efficiency that this build brings to the table and the different types of higher budget options that it can actually bring to your min-maxing, or the type of build variants that you can make out of this if you so choose to. So without further ado, let's just crack into it. What I'm going to show you is an Abyss and a Breach focused Atlas tree set up for a tier 16 map, and I'm going to show you a Maven's Writ run as well. And I want to talk about a couple of pros and cons first. First off, the con of this is the summoning process, and I want to show you this on single targets. And the other one is the weapon swap. So I only do weapon swaps when I really have to do a single in-game boss target damage approach, such as Maven or Uber Elder. And that means running things like Predator, or running with multi-strike instead of Awakened Melee Splash. Same thing with running with a Precision instead of our Blasphemy setup as well. So I'm going to show you this in action before I show you the PoB, and I want to show you some gameplay footage as well. And this is a personal favorite of mine, so I've made some changes to this build, which has actually made the build slightly worse, but it is better in terms of my personal playstyle, which is why I've made these changes. So the summoning process of Animate Weapon is that you summon your blades out, and then you use your Animate Weapon to use them on these lingering blades that will then create minions. And these minions have a whopping almost 1 million effective HP, so they are able to tank even Uber content, which is absolutely beautiful to see as well. My build version of this is more focused on clearing than it is on single targets. And I'm going to show you this build in action versus Maven here. This is a regular Maven, and the first thing we're going to do is summon some weapons. And I'm using an Enduring Mana Flask to make sure I can afford summoning that. Once I got a couple of weapons out, I will show you how to alleviate the pressure of the summonings of these weapons, simply for the fact that this build is summoning fewer minions, or less time spent summoning minions, than something like SRS. And it deals more damage. And this is the damage approach versus this. And the gem levels are not all maxed out. There are some gems that are still lower level. I haven't corrupted that one. Awakened Void Manipulation is lower level. So when I'm spending time here, for example, as you can see, what's going to happen is that I will be spending that time resummoning weapons. This memory game, there's a little bit of break time. What I'll do now is I'm just summoning weapons. And the reason for that, even if I have max weapons, is to refresh the duration of them. I'm not doing anything else, so I might as well do that. This means that once the fight starts, I won't need to resummon weapons mid-fights. And this is the single target DPS output, and as you can see, it is more than fine. As you can see with a Leap Slam, it is pretty goddamn comfortable when it comes to speed on this build. The reason we're using Leap Slam instead of a faster approach of running something like Shield Charge is simply because we want to reduce the amount of sockets we need in the build for the sake of using a Flame Dash instead. So that's why we're not using that. And now we have the Vol Animate Weapon version, which we'll get in bosses like this. And the solution to this is very simple. I will be using them before the last phase and go from there. And it's very simple. Oh, almost failing that. Just chilling, summoning some weapons whilst we wait. And we do this, put the Arcanist brand up, summon some more weapons, do the curse, the Predator, and the guy's gotta be dead. And now, we're gonna get into the last phase. Stay away from the shit. And now, whilst we're waiting, again, we are going to be resummoning weapons. Just chilling, having a good time, relaxing, watch the count. Circle, up, back. Alright. So now I can summon my weapons. And up again. And that's basically it. That's basically it. Now, let's try not to get hit by the beam so you end up with 10 energy shield next time. But that's basically how the build works in single target boss fights. Now, I'm going to show you some gameplay footage versus clearing with this build. And this is the problem when it comes to switching between pure single target boss fights like this and clearing. And that is that it's better to just go to your town and then switch your gems at that point. This means we are removing the precision and we're adding blasphemy. And the reason for that is very straightforward. We are going to be utilizing the approach of the Profane Bloom. And this is a beautiful. Profane Bloom is collected through this build through the use of Forbidden Jewels. We have 2 of them right here. And we will be initiating this aura, and I'll show you how the clear speed works with this build and how we play it. So we're going to pop this off with Abyss. And we're going to pop it with Betrayal as well, just for the sake of it. And in this version, it is very important to keep in mind that Vol Animate Weapon is very helpful to get your minions started. So what we'll do in the start of a map is this. We will summon the blades. We will summon a few weapons with our mana flask. And as you can see here on our Vol skill, it's going to ramp up pretty quickly as we move forward. And as you'll see, thanks to now having Blasphemy support, we're going to be exploding enemies. Now that we have the approach of using a Vol Animate Weapon, what I'll do is summon a few blades, click the Vol Summon Weapons, and now I will spend the remaining time basically just summoning my weapons, and my weapon will be my full army of Animate Weapons before the Vol weapon is done. And the only time I'm summoning weapons is if my minions are busy fighting enemies. And that's basically it. It's very straightforward. It's very simple and smooth to play this build in general. So as you can see, we have 17 minions. And even though I already have my full army, what I will be doing now is very simple. I'll cast my Arcane's Brand when I'm popping boxes. If I have an Abyss like this, I will pop my boxes. And anytime my minions are busy fighting something, I am resummoning weapons. This means that I never have to run out of minions. I never have to worry about them. I never have to think about them, because I am consistently resummoning them at any given time where my character would normally stand still anyways, which means that I don't really notice that I'm summoning new weapons every now and then. And I don't even summon a lot of them. Just 1, 2, maybe 3 here and there. And that way, whenever I lose minions because of duration, I don't lose my entire army. The Profane Bloom explosion for this high body build is just absolutely beautiful. Outside of that, the Leap Slime is really nice. I'm going to talk about this in depth with how we achieve these things in the PoB after we show you the gameplay footage. So as you can see, it's mostly just running around and then convocating on top of the enemies, and the build is very, very tanky. It is still possible to get one shot with this build, despite its layers of defense, and that has most to do with these things. For example, my Cold Rest right now is down to 22% because of the altars. So you got to keep that in mind. Even if the build's tanky, as soon as you start pumping altars the way I am, then you're going to lose your defensive layers, and you can actually die. It has happened a few times if you do it that way. However, if you don't play it like that, or you do Maven in Witness maps, for example, I don't even know how you're going to manage to die on a build like this. Same thing when it comes to Abyssal Depths. Again, we're summoning a couple of weapons. We're going to get Vol Animate Weapon. Instead of using that versus the boss, we're going to utilize it as a means to an end. In this case, we're going to get 3, but the means to an end here is that I'm going to have weapons to help me clearing, and I don't really need a full army for this build to clear very well. I only need a couple. So I'm only summoning extra weapons when my minions are killing and I have to stand still for a few seconds. It's the only given time that I will bother stopping to summon new weapons. Simply because it's just not needed. Single target, put the Arcane's Brand up, summon my weapons whilst the minions are dealing with the boss. It's gonna pop to the next phase. Same thing here. Summoning weapons, we go out. I don't even have my full army yet. Now I have my full army. And despite that, I am summoning weapons again. And the reason, again, is just to make sure they don't have to run out of them. The duration of these weapons is 85 seconds. Absolutely insane. So you spend less time summoning these minions than you would do with an SRS build, for example. There's the boss. That's a bad jewel. And that's it. Now let's talk about the actual PoB for this character. Now obviously this is a high budget build utilizing meta clusters, and what's really interesting with these meta clusters is that obviously they are like most other minion meta builds. We're using 12 passive clusters, but instead of having a notable we're going for all attributes. By having all attributes on both of these clusters allows us to completely disregard any attributes on our gear, so our gear can solve the resistances. We're using Indomitable Army together with Minion Leech. We're having Grave Intentions with the Convocation CDR. We have Decay Ward with the Max Elemental Resistances being our defensive minion stats. This allows our Animate weapons to have an effective HP pool of 800,000 or higher. With even better gear, we can bring this up to 1 million if you so wish. Outside of that, we are actually oiling Spiritual Command instead of oiling Charisma like we normally do, and this is how we achieve that insane attack speed for our Leap Slam. And then we're using just generic stats across the board for the auras through Sovereignty, as well as the Influence, CI, of course, and then we have the Grave Enduring Bond, as well as some block nodes, and the extra damage nodes from here, Divine Shield, as well as Sanctum of Thought. So very straightforward tree for this kind of build. For lower levels, I actually haven't taken these on my character in-game, which is currently level 96. So I'm lacking these 3, and this node here on the left-hand side, if you're going to play this in a lower level than 100. Outside of that, the skills, we're using Animate Weapon with Withering Touch, Awaken Mini Damage, Awaken Void Manipulation, Predator, and Awaken Multi-Strike. You can use a Diversion Multi-Strike if the Awaken is too expensive. The aura setup is an Enlightened Discipline Tempest Shield, and then there's a Leap Slam Fast Attacks with an Awakened Generosity, and the weapon for that Envy aura, running Spectres, and the Spectres we're using can be listed in here. There's 1 Arena Master, 1 Pale Seraphim, and 1 Carnage Chieftain. And then we're having the Defiance Banner, and then an Arcanist Brand for Desecrate and Bone Offering. And then we have a setup in here. For single target, we are switching the Blasphemy for Precision, and this is doable because our gloves are white sockets. So for clearing, we switch the Precision away, and we add the Blasphemy instead for our Despair Curse. Otherwise, we'll self-cast it because it's stronger. And then an Unset Ring for the Bladefall. There's a placeholder here for the reading notes. There's a level 1 temporal change. This is cursed by our Animate Guardian. A link to the Animate Guardian guide is in the descriptions below. And the notes is also covering some information, such as if you don't have a corrupted Aegis Aurora with Determination, we will drop the faster attacks away from the game, move the Tempest Shield in there, and then socket your Determination together with the Enlighten. This will actually give you more mana to work with, but make sure it's not linked with Awakened Generosity, because you want that armor. And also, this will make your Leap Slam slightly slower. For single target, obviously, like I mentioned before, we're switching in Predator and the Multi-Strike over the Feeding Frenzy and Splash, and we can also change the Awakened Blasphemy for the Divergent Precision. Item-wise, this is using a United in Dream. In the PoB, there are no Crucible trees. Obviously, anything with attack speed would be optimal, but damage works fine. I am currently using a corrupted Aegis Aurora with Determination. There's a section in the notes, like I mentioned, that covers that if you don't have it. The Bone Helmet I'm going to take last because it's a bit tricky to craft. The Skin and Loyal is the best choice in my opinion. You can use a Corrupted Tabula Rasa as well to get +2 Dominion or Duration or both. However, the Skin and Loyal gives you the best defense for this, but also costs a bit more currency. 4 White Triad Grip, and then we're going to run with a generic High Energy Shield Boots with any resistances that you might need. An Envy, No Reservation, All's Uprising with the Spiritual Command Oil. We're having a Bone Ring, and thanks to the fact that we don't need stats anymore, we're only looking for a little bit of resistances, but mostly we're looking at getting high amounts of attack and cast speed. In game, I'm currently running one with 14%, and then minion damage would be preferable. And then an Unset Ring, again, you don't need the stats anymore. Darkness and Throne is very important that you get a good one, because we want to have 40% chance to poison from our jewels. Our weapon provides 60, and I put a Ghastly Eye Jewel in here with 15%. That means that with 100% Darkness and Throne, that gives me 30, so I only need 10% from one more jewel. We are putting a Mana Boost Gaze inside the Darkness and Throne in this build in my higher budget version. The reason for this is to make sure that we actually get 30% dot multi for our minions, because we're not going to use that many Ghastly Eye Jewels. This does not increase the cap, but it does increase the amount of percent damage multiplier for our minions that they get per jewel. So in my case, I have 100%, so instead of 6%, I get 12% for our minions. Portal Faith and regular Flagellant or Transgressor Flask, the Basalt, Granite, Quicksilver, and Enduring Mana Flask. We're running a Quickening Covenant as well as a Fortress Covenant, and we're having an extra Ghastly Eye Jewel on the side, giving us 3 Ghastly Eye Jewels because the Mana Boost is in the belt. We're capping that out. And the reason we're getting the explosions is because of the Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame jewels with Profane Bloom for the Occultist Explosion. That's why we're running a Blasphemy curse setup. So I'm going to talk about the helmet real quick, and it's very tricky because the thing is, this helmet is allowing us to run these auras in this specific way. And I do want to point out that in the description, in the build guide, there is a high budget version that does not go as crazy as this one. This is the super high budget version, which is more in line with how I like to play this build. You can make this better at both clearing and or better at single target if you want to, but this is how I like to play this build. So what you want to do to craft this helmet is better to use on a hubris circlet with the enchant, of course. Then you will spam Essence of Loathing, and then once you hit that with +1 or at the +2 level of minion skills, most often you will hit this with +1. You will then fill out the items with other stats, such as a Benchcraft and Exalt Slam, the rest of the mods, which I've done in-game. As you can see here, I have some random mods on it. And once I've done that, I was working on my implicit modifiers. I got this through the Eater Worlds, as well as the Steering Exarch modifiers. And I was focusing on the mana reservation, so I could get that perfect through the use of the Orb of Conflict. These orbs here. They will unpredictably raise the strength of one of those modifiers and lower the other one. So you do this till the mana reservation is 12%, and then you will just smack in the second one for the Despair Curse effect. Now I went for the with a unique enemy's presence because we only really need to scale that versus single targets. Once you've achieved this, you will safely corrupt this by giving the item 30% quality. This is done through a thing called Crazy Vassal. That is a beast that corrupts the item without risking it to brick and making it 30% quality. And once you've done that, you can then utilize Tainted Teardrops currency to reroll the tier value of modifiers on the item. Now, Tainted Teardrops are very specific. So if we look at how much they're going for right now, we can see that they're being sold for about 0.7 divines each. And what they do is that they will randomly increase or lower the tier of a modifier on the helmet that we're using them on. The item needs to be corrupted for this. The essence mod cannot be moved, and the level of minion skills can only go from +1 to +2. Since this craft cannot remove a modifier, we're only using this till the plus level of minion skills becomes level 2, and that's literally how we craft this helmet. So a little bit tricky to get your hands on all the stuff to get this going and understanding it. But once you get the hang of the process of this, it's rather straightforward, but can cost quite a bit of currency, hence why this is a very high budget build. Outside of that, the build is absolutely beautiful. In the single target setup, we're doing about 60 million. This is, again, without any crucible trees, so you can bring this up even higher if you want to, and easily hit the poison cap, because we're just under it right now. And if you want to focus on clearing, obviously, like I mentioned before, you would switch out the precision and smack in the Awakened Blasphemy, and now you're going to be very tight on the mana, which is why having modifiers such as reduced channeling cost on the rings is very, very attractive to keep the cost down to 52, and I only have 82 mana left over. So be a little bit wary with the mana cost of your skills, and that's basically it. This is the super high budget version of the Poison Animate weapon build that I've been absolutely falling in love with playing. It's so smooth to play, and the shield charge attack speed is just, I mean, look at it. If you use shield charge for this, it gets super fast. But we're using leap time, and the leap time speed is also just as good in my opinion. But if you use a shield charge, I'll show you here real quick how that would look, just to give you an idea that if you want to smack that in and utilize that instead of how speedy that is. So you do this and just convocate your minions aggressively towards wherever the enemies are. You can even get a crucible modifiers on your weapon to give reduced cooldown for your convocation even further, so bring that 1.88 down even lower. So there's a couple of things you can do to tweak around if you so choose to do. Anyways, this is a high budget build. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, so if you guys liked it, let me know in the comments below. If you're playing the low budget version, let me know how that's going for you guys. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe and keep rocking.